Wow, gone were the days of snail mail, Xeroxing piles of paper, paying a fortune to ship it, and then waiting months for a reply, which could have been a rejection, and good riddance. I was thrilled. Not only that, but Sherlock Holmes seems to be having a resurgence of popularity in the movies and TV, so the timing was great. Immediately, friends and coworkers advised me to use social media to spread the word. Facebook was something I already did, so I told my friends. Then I got help starting a Facebook author page, then Facebook ads, then a video trailer of me reading a few pages in front of a crackling green screen fireplace. Then a friend created an author website for me, something people have been advising me to do for years. It's a new world of publishing, and it's hard to keep up. Authors are encouraged to do all they can to promote themselves now, partly because this is the age of social media, and partly because publishers don't have the money or inclination to do it themselves, so I'm trying to do my part. Last weekend, I heard authors Andre Debus III and Richard Russo talk as part of the Maynard Reads Together program, and I've decided I don't go to enough author talks. I always get a lot out of them, and if only to find myself re-inspired to write. But secretly, I feel a bit unworthy calling myself a writer in the presence of those who've spent years at this craft, discovering and artfully revealing the truth of their lives. Still, even when writing a novel about Sherlock Holmes, it's my opinion that you can't not reveal parts of yourself, even if you don't realize it. The story comes out of your brain, the plot is yours, the ideas are yours. It's just important to be as honest to the story as possible. Perhaps you're not literally writing about your life, but what's important to you oozes out somehow, intentionally or not. I've always enjoyed and done writing, even as a child, but I haven't dedicated myself to it the way a writer is supposed to. Some authors have said they can't not write, that it's like breathing to them. But for me, it's very easy not to write. As Dorothy Parker said, I hate writing, I love having written. There are a million other things that are more easy, fascinating, pressing, or important. Easy, watching TV. Fascinating, world travel. Pressing, the laundry. Important, ending factory farming. How can writing compete with those? Well, ultimately you end up doing what you're compelled to do, what you can do. And luckily, writing is something you can do better and better as you get older, unlike gymnastics when you peak at 18. Also, despite the opportunities to speak and read before a crowd, writing is not a performance art. It stands alone. I don't have to be there for an audience to experience it. After I've written something and the words are final, it can be reproduced and available to anyone who wants to read it. And there's more being read now than ever before, though the quality of that writing is in some doubt sometimes. I'm talking about the excitement about blogs and Facebook and Twitter. And although I talk about the words being final, as the poet Paul Valery said, a poem is never finished, only abandoned. And that is true about almost all writing. It's a funny thing, the world of writing. It's a very solitary existence, if that's all you do. And 95% of all writers can't make a living at it. Those are some reasons I found it so hard to dedicate myself unilaterally to it. While I'm not the most extroverted person in the world, I do enjoy my friendships and interacting with real human beings on a regular basis. Writing can be a lonely life, and as the children's book author Jane Yolen observes, it requires many hours of applying the BIC principle, butt in chair. And then the funny thing is when the solitary part is over, you're expected to suddenly put on your PR hat and do a shameless tap dance to promote your book. Those are two very different talents. Most people I know are good at one, but not the other. Debus and Rousseau were good at both. They talked about whether they would still write if they had no audience, and they both said yes. But Rousseau did admit that the quality of his writing would be different. It would be more self-indulgent. He admitted that public acknowledgement of his work kept him accountable to some extent. In other words, when you know you're being judged, you care more about the quality. I know this myself after receiving keen critical comments from my children's book writing group, one of whom is here today, and from my editor who is at Little Brown now. I realized that I was fooling myself into thinking a section was better than it actually was, partly because I was lazy, and partly because, to paraphrase, she who is her own editor has a fool for a client. My editor made me see that I could do better, and she knew how to bring it out. My day job for years has been in production and educational publishing in Boston, and I think seeing the view from both sides of the desk has been good for me as an author. It's a goal of mine to never be called a difficult author. One of the truest compliments I ever received was from that first editor who wrote me a recommendation a few years ago saying, "Margaret's good-natured, low-stress persona maximizes the potential for positive working relationships and experiences. In short, she's an editor's dream." As nice as that is, part of being an editor's dream these days has evolved into being someone extremely well-versed in self-promotion. And that's still something I'm struggling with, but it's one of the reasons I'm here tonight. So I'd like to read an excerpt from the book, and I do have a video that's going to work. I can do that after I read. I'll read this section first, and then we'll see if that works. Okay, so the story, if you haven't read it, is if you know about the original Sherlock Holmes stories, his nemesis was Professor Moriarty, and Professor Moriarty's daughter, Constance Moriarty, is in this, and she's this very alluring younger woman that Watson finds himself attracted to. And at this point where I'm going to read, Holmes has been away, and he's been sort of incapacitated for a while, and he comes back to their apartment at 221B Baker Street, and Watson is there. As I opened the door of my familiar old quarters at 221B Baker Street, the unpleasantly saccharine aroma of French perfume accosted me. I looked around and found that the furniture had been dusted, polished, and rearranged. And, to my horror, I saw the piles of my notes, books, and papers had been separated, organized, and filed neatly on the shelves. Watson entered jovially from the bedroom. "Holmes, dear fellow, you're back," he cried, slapping me on the back. "How are you? You're looking rather better than the last time I saw you." "Watson," I said firmly, "what has Miss Moriarty done with my papers?" "Ah, yes, your papers. Quite a mess they were, really. I knew you wouldn't want them disturbed, but, well, Constance went on a cleaning binge, and there seemed to be no stopping her. The old place looks rather decent, though, don't you think? A good bout with a mop was just what it needed, eh, what? Almost like new." He turned to me quizzically. "By the way, how did you know it was Constance?" When the smell of tobacco is replaced by that of perfume and lace doilies are suddenly draped over the faded upholstery of our old armchairs, it is not difficult to surmise that a woman has been at work. Your preoccupation with the case and our attractive young client leads me to the obvious answer. "I have been spending some time with her, Holmes," Watson admitted. "How could you let her at my papers, Watson?" I agonized. "You know how important they are to me. They may have looked somewhat disorganized to the layman, but I assure you there was a method to the madness. I had my own system of filing. Look at them now. They're all out of order. It's positively hopeless." I sunk into my chair, sticking myself on a pin holding down the doily on the back. "Ouch. Sorry, Holmes. She may even have taken something or thrown it away. She didn't throw things out, did she, Watson?" "Compose yourself, dear fellow. There's no need to go accusing Constance of stealing. I'm certain she would not have the slightest notion of what to do with the curious articles and illegible notes you collect like a pack rat. She was only trying to be helpful." "Holmes." "Watson, I do not trust that woman. For a time, I considered the circumstantial evidence against her to be too clear-cut, too obvious to be true. That's why I went to France and allowed myself to be followed. I hoped that by stepping into the trap set for me, I would discover who was trying to blame Miss Moriarty for young Michael's death." "Holmes." "But the ransom note, the map, the money were all just part of a clever ruse to make it look as if someone else were involved. There is no kidnapper, and I'll bet my right arm, Professor Moriarty, still resides with the devil. No man could survive the crevasse he fell into in Switzerland. And that's another point. Why is it that Miss Moriarty has read every one of your accounts, and yet is seemingly so ignorant of the one involving her father?" "Holmes, I have to tell you something." A murder is committed in her dressing room. We are almost driven off the road, and I'm nearly poisoned to death, all during the short course of this investigation. I'm uncertain exactly what it is I'm investigating now, but of one aspect I feel quite confident. I know who is behind this whole mystery. Holmes, I'm trying to tell you, I am engaged to be married. Constance Moriarty, to Constance Moriarty. We both turned and stared at each other in disbelief. What? We exclaimed simultaneously. You can't be serious, Holmes. You're engaged to be what? I said incredulously. Married. Constance has consented to make me the happiest man in the world. But you cannot. Oh, but I will be, I assure you. Now, what's all this about my bride-to-be being a murderer? Watson, as your oldest and closest friend, I warn you now. Warn me. Don't marry that girl. She is the personification of evil. She is the daughter of the Napoleon of crime, a man so cunning he robbed and murdered countless innocent victims, and no one even knew his name. I appreciate your concern, Holmes, but I'm afraid you overstep the bounds of even our friendship to tell me whom I may or may not marry. This is a personal matter, and I think it highly unethical of you to intrude. Besides, even if her father were who you say he was, why should that place a curse on his whole family? Even if he were? I repeated in amazement. Constance has told me all about her father. He died in a mountaineering expedition in Switzerland. He appears to have been a rather innocuous old fellow. Hardly the ghoul you've always described him to be. Don't tell me you truly believe. I believe what I see, Holmes. You yourself taught me that rule, and it occurred to me that I never had actually seen the sinister Professor Moriarty, nor for that matter had anyone else, as you said. Then I remembered that at the time you told me the story of Reichenbach Falls, you had become increasingly dependent on the use of cocaine. Yes, it was evident even to my eyes. Might it not be now please take no offense by what I'm about to suggest. Might the whole affair, might it not have been just a drug-induced fantasy? My heart sank and shattered like a china cup on the floor. A fantasy? Have you ever known me to live a life of fantasy, Watson? Have you ever known me to trust or judge anything without the firmest of facts to support it? I am shocked and deeply wounded that you could even consider the validity of such a proposition. As you yourself know all too well, Holmes, a mind controlled by cocaine alarmingly distorts one's perception of reality. It is not you I disbelieve. It is the drug. I felt reason and emotion suddenly slipping from my grasp. The one person on whom I had always been able to rely was being seduced by the princess of darkness and turning my greatest professional triumph into a nightmarish hallucination. Besides, continued Watson, Inspector Gregson at the yard has a suspect in custody now, a young girl named Elizabeth Wedge. She was Constance's dresser. What evidence is there to implicate this girl? Her fingerprints were on the knife in Michael's back, along with Dickerson's and, of course, mine. Dickerson's got some sort of alibi. Gregson is holding her? Yes, he's already done quite a thorough investigation, and a Scotland Yard detective couldn't conduct a thorough investigation of the dirt between his own toes. Holmes! I'm going now to question the girl myself, and we shall see the flimsy basis for her arrest. That is such stuff as promotions are made on, Watson. Well, I'm going to see if this works now. And this is a little, like a video trailer.